We're taking you inside mortgage fraud where it starts.
Income is not issue because income he can make.
You wanna go to jail for me?
Yeah, they will do some documentation.
That's why I wanted to meet in person because a lot of things cannot be discussed over the phone.
हमको ना कुछ salt and pepper करना पड़ेगा.
Yeah, they will do some documentation showing that you guys are making more.
When I announced that I'm going to become a mortgage agent, there were so many people who actually reached out to me and said that it's a really bad industry, you should not be joining it. They also said that you will be actually spoiling your name if you attach your name to this industry. I never responded to all those people because I was scared too. I was leaving my well-settled job and doing something that I've never done before. However, now, after completing almost 1 year of becoming a mortgage agent, I can proudly say that it's not the industry that's at fault. It's the people. There are so many mortgage agents and for that matter realtors who have actually done really well in this industry and they have done it honestly. In today's video, I'll be dissecting the recent CBC news that made the headlines where the real estate agent actually took a fee to falsify documents. So let's get started. So let's first talk about one of the mortgage frauds which is very common, which we saw in the CBC article as well, and that's fraud for income. So how it works is you actually go to the bank, you ask for a mortgage, they look at your income, they give you a number which is $500,000, they tell you that you cannot buy a house more than $500,000 with your down payment and income taken into account, and then you actually get very pissed at the mortgage agent and the bank or whoever you're talking to or the system as a whole, and you say that you are actually making a lot more money but you're only qualified for $500,000 and that's unfair. And then what happens is there's an angel that comes into your life. Most times it's your mortgage agent or your realtor who comes and says, oh, aap tension mat lo, mortgage to ho jayegi. That basically means that do not worry, mortgage will happen, we will make it happen. Now, some people would take it as a red flag, but some people will actually be very happy that they will be buying their dream house. Now, let's see what happens in the background. The realtor or the mortgage agent is actually falsifying your income document so that you can qualify for that amazing house. Now, all this is actually not fee. You'll be paying a minimum 1% fee to make this all happen. Now, these documents have been submitted to the bank and bank most times would actually accept those because there's a stellar job done on falsifying these documents. And finally, you actually get the house and you are happy. Damn! Shocking, right? This is wrong at so many different levels. It's not just the fault of the realtor and the mortgage agent, it's the bank and the buyer himself who needs to be held accountable for it. And the biggest problem is that no one talks about the fact that doing this is an actual crime and there's prison time involved in this.
It is also a criminal offense. Banned under real estate and mortgage laws, the agent could be jailed or fined for pushing it.
Now let's talk about that for a minute. What happens to all these people if they are caught committing this crime? Now let's talk about the repercussions on a mortgage agent first. They can actually lose their license. That's needless to say. They will also be fined for $50,000 and they can be imprisoned for up to 2 years. Now, it's not always the case that you'll be penalized in all three regards, but there could be 1, 2, or all of this that can be implemented depending on the level of fraud. Now, let's talk about the realtors involved. Now, it actually depends on the level of involvement, but because of this sting operation, the realtor involved here would actually have the repercussions that a mortgage agent has or more. So there's a high chance of prison time and heavy fines. Now let's talk about you, the buyer, who is actually going into this without knowing what the repercussions are. Let's talk about the best case in this scenario. If you are caught in this crime, you will lose the deposit, that's number one, but there are worse things that would happen. You can actually lose your job because there's a background check that is required when you are applying for jobs. So you can lose your job and you will not be able to get a job as well. Number two, there will be no credit cards for you. There's no mortgage for you. There's no car payments. There's nothing, right? Any access to debt or credit is really difficult now because you have fraud written on your credit report. Now, if you're caught, this in fact is the best case scenario. The worst case is that you are a PR and you are caught in this criminal investigation because this is fraud and this can be a criminal case, especially in this case that happened on CBC. Then you will probably have to pay thousands of dollars to the lawyers to help you save from deportation. If you're caught in a fraud that actually turns into a criminal case, that's actually grounds for deportation. Now let's just say that the chances of this is just 0.01%, but are you willing to put the entire Canadian dream, whatever you have worked for, coming all the way to Canada, building a life here, kids going to school, are you willing to lose all that for that dream house that you want to buy? You know what the problem is? The problem is that people actually don't know what happens if you are caught committing a fraud. A lot of people actually think that falsifying documents is actually okay and all they are doing is jugaad. It's not jugaad, it's an actual crime. And worst of all, there's lack of education on the various products that are available with banks and other lenders that can actually help you get the same house but within the policy guidelines and within the rules without committing fraud. When people told me that I should not be becoming a mortgage agent because I'll actually spoil my name by attaching myself to the industry, I was actually scared. I was scared that what if they are right? What if the entire industry is in the wrong? And I personally had no idea because I was so new. But now, after 1 year of doing this and helping 85 plus families get their first homes without scamming the system, I can now say that people who discouraged me were actually wrong. It's so easy to blame the entire industry for what's happening. However, there are so many mortgage agents and brokerages that I know that are actually doing the right thing. They are actually earning an honest living. They are building their businesses on integrity. That's one of the reasons why I joined my brokerage Valco Financial, because I knew the people who were working there, they were based their business on integrity. I'm now working with a team of underwriters who are actually really good and really experienced in understanding fraud and making sure that we are doing everything by the book and within policy. I and my team are on track to make $500,000 in gross commissions on my book alone, and not one dime has come from scamming the system. And therefore, I am proof that it's possible to earn an honest living. So who is to be blamed for all that's happening? It's not just the mortgage agent. Now, as a new mortgage agent, I actually get a lot of calls from realtors and sometimes clients asking me to falsify documents. There was one time when a realtor actually called me, asked me to falsify documents, and when I said no, which I always do, they actually said that I will not be able to make a single penny in this industry because I don't do this kind of stuff, and they took their business to someone else. Now, this was 2 months ago when I had actually crossed 50 million in gross volume, and I'm pretty sure that realtor was nowhere close to that volume on his book. And that's the problem. For new mortgage agents, it's so difficult to get leads in this competitive market. There are so many mortgage agents out there, and then you have to compete with the banks, and therefore you need to rely on these realtors to give you leads. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that all realtors are bad. I, in fact, work with a bunch of realtors who are really good and know what they are doing and work with the client's budget. But there are realtors who would want you to falsify documents as new agents. And if you don't do that, that business will go to someone else. Now, I'm very fortunate to have built a social presence before I became a mortgage agent, and I don't have to rely on these realtors to give me leads, and I can actually handpick the realtors that I want to work with, but not everyone is fortunate. Now, a lot of people actually said, Navjot, you are very arrogant, you are saying no to business, and that's okay because I don't want the client to be in trouble, and therefore I pick my partners very carefully. Now, the problem is that not all mortgage agents would have that, and therefore they would be forced into making a living out of working with these realtors, and that's really sad. But for any new mortgage agents who are watching this, I would highly recommend that you build a social presence before you actually get into this industry. Or if you are in this industry and you need to make an honest living, just do reels every single day on Instagram, give value to your consumers, and that way you would actually do really well, and you would not have to rely on these realtors who are wanting you to do something that you really don't want to do. It's not easy, but it's possible, and it is the right thing to do. But the fault doesn't always lie with the realtor and the mortgage agent. There's a customer that we need to talk about, the buyer, you and me, who are actually going and buying a house. We need to have realistic expectations when we are buying a house in a market like Ontario. Is it fair? No. But it is within the rules and we need to follow them. So many people actually want to buy their dream houses as their first house, and that's completely wrong. Because let's assume that you're earning $4,000 and you falsify the documents and make it $10,000 and buy that expensive house, you still have to make the mortgage payments with the $4,000 that's getting in your home. The mortgage agent, the realtor, whoever is making the documents is not gonna pay the mortgage. And these consumers are the same ones who actually file for bankruptcies and go into foreclosure the quickest when something like what's happening right now happens. When interest rates goes up, everything goes up, the cost of living goes up, and they lose their job, they actually lose their house with it. The agents made their fat commission, but the buyer is the one who has to pay for it. So what do you do as a buyer? Number one is we need to lower our expectations. If you're not making enough money, it's okay. Don't buy that house. Move to a different province. Work on your income. Try to make more money. Ask for a higher wage. All those are really good things that you can actually do to increase your home buying. You can always upgrade into your second house, your third house, and eventually reaching your dream house with the equity that you have built in all those houses. The second thing that should happen is you need to work with mortgage agents and realtors that you can actually trust. The ones who are talking in your best interest and you are not just a fat commission check for them. And the third thing, which is very important, is watch out for the red flags and know that committing a mortgage fraud is a crime and you have a lot more to lose than the mortgage agent or that realtor. Now, this video is actually becoming a rant, but it's really important for me to mention that the regulators have actually gotten it wrong on the penalties as well. I don't think that there are enough penalties for mortgage agents and realtors who are actually caught committing frauds. $50,000 is not enough money for a mortgage agent or a realtor who are making $5,000 to $10,000 per commission check, and more sometimes if they charge you more for committing that fraud. And let's be honest, a lot of people actually don't see jail time either. And in my view, and I know that it doesn't really matter because regulators are not watching this, but in my view, the penalty should at least have one more zero attached to it so that the stakes are very high and the mortgage agent and the realtor actually thinks twice, thrice, 4 times before committing a fraud like this. I also believe that there's a long-term measure to be taken where the documentation should not be as easy to forge and it should be easier to track that forgery. Now, to be honest, their systems are much stronger than what you and I actually can think of, and they are catching a lot of fraud before it actually happens. However, I really believe that there has to be a long-term way of maybe tracking your employment as part of the credit report, which makes it very difficult to get away with income fraud. This is just a random example. I'm sure there are better ways of doing this, but that's a topic for another day. Now, there's one more thing that I actually didn't like about this entire video, which was that everyone that was involved was South Asian. Now, I do agree that there is a lot of this happening in our community, but it's not just our community. There are a lot of other people who are actually doing this and they are actually not Indians.
We cold called 25 mortgage agents in 5 hot markets across Canada and asked for counterfeit documents.
Now, CBC ran 25 sting calls and there was one Canadian who said that he will not go to jail for someone else and he would not commit fraud.
You wanna go to jail for me?
No.
So why would I do this for you?
But everything else was revolving around Indians and South Asians, which was wrong. And I'm not the only one talking about this. There are many Canadians who are talking about this on Twitter and various social handles that the video was very racist and the industry has been very racist against South Asian community committing fraud. Now, the problem is that people are gullible. They would feel that all Indians are bad and they commit fraud. And when you are an IT contractor and you are looking for a job, just because that person actually saw this video and thinks that an Indian is wrong because they commit fraud in mortgage, they just saw this video, you don't get a job. We don't know to what extent this particular viral video actually impacts us in other fields as well. There are so many South Asian people who I know in this industry who actually care about the people, and like I said before, they make an honest living. I'm one of them, and I'm really proud that 85 families that I've put in their first homes, they actually did not commit fraud. We actually did everything by the book. Yes, they were not able to buy their dream houses as their first houses, but at least they sleep better at night. And I know a lot of people are actually thinking that, oh Navjot, this is so unfair. The policies are against us, the inflation is against us, there's recession coming, job cuts happening, all this is unfair, and now you are saying that I can't buy my dream house. To be honest, I totally agree with you, and I 100% think that this is unfair, but that doesn't mean that we commit a mortgage fraud. It's not just jugaad that we are doing, it's actual fraud, it's an actual crime that we are committing. Yes, it's not as heinous as committing a murder, but it's still crime. That's all I have for today. This was not my usual video, but I hope you liked this. If you did, do hit the like button and share it with someone who would actually benefit from this. I know that I may have pissed a lot of people in this process, but that's okay. Do write in the comments what your thoughts are about mortgage fraud, and if you have similar stories to share, I would love to read them and I would love to get your point of view. And do subscribe to the channel if you have not done that. There are so many videos that we make on this channel on real estate, investing and money. That's all I have for today. मिलते हैं अगली वीडियो में, तब तक के लिए bye bye.